There are moments in life when the air feels still, yet something deep inside whispers that change is coming. You cannot explain it, but your spirit feels it. The peace around you starts to feel heavy, almost like the sky before rain. This is what many call the silence before the storm. It is not only the stillness of nature, it is the pause that heaven allows before truth begins to unfold. In relationships with narcissistic people, this silence often appears when everything seems calm. They are smiling, pretending to care, maybe even acting more loving than before. But underneath that surface, something dark is already moving. You may not see it, but your soul does. The Lord places a quiet warning in your heart, saying, "Be still and watch." Before we begin this journey, it is a blessing to know from which part of the world you are watching, and at what hour of the day God has guided you to this message. Truly, it is a joy to witness how the Lord gathers hearts from every corner of the earth, uniting them in one spirit and in one truth. The Bible in Proverbs chapter 26 verse 24 reminds us, "Enemies disguise themselves with their lips, but in their hearts they harbor deceit." The narcissist becomes skilled in disguise. They speak peace while planning harm. They offer affection while secretly planting emotional traps. And though the world may see their charm, heaven sees their intent. It is during this season of silence that the Lord begins His work. He allows the mask to stay on just a little longer, not to protect the narcissist, but to prepare your spirit. God does not rush exposure. He works in truth and timing. There are things you cannot see yet because your heart is not ready for the full picture. So, He holds back the storm until you have the strength to stand in it. Many ask, why does the narcissist seem to get away with everything? The answer lies in patience. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 17 says, "God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked. For there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. What looks like silence is not permission, it is preparation." The Lord lets the narcissist believe their lies are working so that when truth comes, no one will be able to deny His justice. This silence is not a curse, it is mercy in disguise. During this time, heaven gives you small signs, a dream, a sudden feeling, or a word that stirs your soul. It is a gentle reminder that even though things look peaceful on the surface, God's hand is already moving underneath. The storm is forming, not to destroy you, but to deliver you. When the silence becomes too heavy, remember, storms never appear without purpose. The wind may rise, but it is the same wind that clears away the fog. The rain may fall, but it is the same rain that washes away what was false. The silence before the storm is not the end. It is the divine pause before truth takes center stage. And soon, what was hidden in darkness will have no place left to hide. Long before the narcissist faces the consequences of their actions, something begins to shift in the spiritual realm. It is quiet but powerful, an unseen battle between truth and deception, between light and shadow. This battle does not happen in the open, and that is what makes it so exhausting. You cannot show others what you feel. You cannot point to the wounds that come from words, manipulation, or false peace. But heaven sees every blow, every tear, and every night you spend questioning your worth. In Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12, it is written, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." These words reveal what truly happens behind the curtain of daily life. The narcissist may appear to be a person of charm or confidence, but what fuels their actions is not from light. There are darker influences that thrive on control, pride, and destruction. You see, the narcissist's war is not only against others, it is against truth itself. They cannot survive in honesty because truth demands accountability. Their comfort lies in confusion. So they twist stories, manipulate feelings, and make others doubt their own minds. They create chaos to stay in control. This is the unseen battle, not just between two people, but between light and deception fighting for the same space in your heart. Many who have endured this kind of spiritual warfare feel drained, not only emotionally, but physically. It feels like your energy disappears, like peace has been stolen. That is because spiritual battles touch more than the mind, they affect the soul. And yet, this is also where God begins to train you for strength. You may not notice it at first, but every prayer you whisper in exhaustion is a weapon. Every time you choose peace over retaliation, heaven counts it as victory. Psalm chapter 34 verse 17 says, "The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles." Even when you feel unheard, your cry reaches the throne of mercy. The narcissist may mock or ignore your pain, but divine ears are never closed. The unseen battle teaches you endurance, not the kind that comes from pride, but the kind that grows from faith. Sometimes this unseen fight becomes so heavy that you begin to wonder, why does it feel like I'm losing? That question itself is part of the deception. The enemy wants you to believe that pain equals defeat. But spiritual pain often signals transformation. When your spirit wrestles with darkness, it means the light inside you is still fighting. If you were truly lost, there would be no battle at all. This is why the narcissist often seems unbothered. Their spirit has stopped resisting darkness. But yours hasn't. You still pray. You still hope. You still try to love rightly even when it hurts. That is how heaven knows who belongs to truth. In time, this unseen battle will no longer be hidden. What the narcissist tried to bury will rise. Their lies will turn on them, their charm will fail, and what they use to destroy others will return upon their own path. The unseen battle will end in visible justice, not because revenge was sought, but because divine law never sleeps. And when the first cracks begin to appear in their false world, you will understand that heaven was fighting for you all along. At first, it feels like love. The narcissist studies what your heart needs to hear and mirrors it back to you. They listen, they praise, they promise. They seem like the answer to every prayer for companionship, peace, and understanding. But what begins as tenderness slowly becomes a web of control. It is not sudden, it is quiet and clever. The same hands that once comforted you begin to shape your thoughts, your confidence, and your choices. In Proverbs chapter 27 verse 6, it is written, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy." The narcissist's affection is that deceitful kiss, sweet at first, poisonous later. Their love is not love at all, but manipulation wearing a mask. It is built on the need to dominate, not to connect. When they give you compliments, it is to gain trust. When they show kindness, it is to create dependency. Slowly, you begin to measure your worth through their approval, and that is how control takes root. The turning point is almost invisible. One day, You simply realize that your peace depends on their mood. You start avoiding truths that might upset them. You begin apologizing for things you did not do. You walk on eggshells, always trying to prevent another explosion. They make you question your memory, your value, even your sanity. This is not love. It is spiritual captivity. What makes this so painful is that the heart still remembers the beginning. You replay the early moments, the warmth, the attention, the laughter, and wonder what changed. But the truth is, nothing changed. It only appeared to. What was false from the beginning can only pretend for so long before its real nature appears. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 14. It says, Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. The narcissist is the same in human form, hiding behind charm, pretending to care, all while feeding on control. They love to see how much of your joy they can claim as their own. Every time you give in, they grow stronger. Every time you resist, they play the victim. You may think, if I love them enough, they will change. But love cannot heal what refuses truth. Love requires humility. Control demands power. One cannot live beside the other. That is why the Lord eventually separates you. He allows the confusion to grow unbearable so that you finally look upward and not inward for answers. What feels like heartbreak is often the hand of heaven freeing your soul from invisible chains. Many who have walked this road carry shame, wondering how they were deceived. But remember, even the kindest hearts can be fooled by counterfeit love. The narcissist preys on goodness because it reflects what they lack. You were not weak for loving. They were empty for pretending. When love turns into control, it marks the beginning of divine reversal. Heaven does not allow oppression to continue forever. What begins as gentle manipulation will one day face divine exposure. And when that day comes, what was meant to destroy your spirit will instead reveal your strength. Soon, the charm that once blinded others will lose its power. The mask will start to crack, and the very control they tried to keep will begin to slip from their hands. There is something almost theatrical about the way a narcissist hides behind kindness. They know how to smile in public, how to say the right words, how to make others believe they are gentle souls. They are polite to strangers, generous when people are watching, and often praised for their charm. Yet behind closed doors, their mask begins to slip. The same voice that sounds kind to others can become sharp and cruel when no one else is listening. The Bible speaks of this kind of deception. Matthew chapter 7 verse 15 says, Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. The narcissist wears that sheep's clothing well. They pretend to be loving, faithful, even spiritual. They may quote scripture, speak about forgiveness, and do small good deeds to appear righteous. But inside, they are driven by self-worship, the belief that everything and everyone must serve their ego. To the outside world, they seem like pillars of kindness. They help neighbors, comfort friends, and appear deeply caring. People look at them and say, "What a good person." But those who live closest to them know another story. Behind the smiles are harsh words. Behind the compliments are insults disguised as jokes. Behind their gestures of love is the desire to control and be admired. This double life is exhausting for their victims. You begin to doubt your own perception. How can someone so good in public be so cruel in private? How can others not see what you see? This is part of their design. Narcissists build their reputation like armor so that when truth finally comes out, no one will believe it. Their mask protects their image, not their soul. In Proverbs chapter 26 verse 23, it is written, "Like a coating of silver dross on earthenware are fervent lips with an evil heart. Their words shine like silver, but their hearts are full of pride and deceit. They speak kindly not because they care, but because they need to maintain control through admiration. When people praise them, they feel powerful. When people question them, they feel threatened. The mask of kindness is not love, it is a weapon. It keeps you silent, confused, and isolated. You may try to expose the truth, but others will say, "That can't be right. They're such a wonderful person." And so you shrink. You begin to question if maybe you are too sensitive, too emotional, or too demanding. That confusion is exactly what they want, but God is not mocked. Luke chapter 12 verse 2 says, "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known." The mask can only last so long before truth begins to break through. Sometimes it happens slowly, through small mistakes, exposed lies, or the testimony of others. Sometimes it happens suddenly, when everything they built on false kindness collapses in a single moment. When this exposure begins, the narcissist scrambles to rebuild their image, but the damage is already done. The same charm that once fooled others starts to sound empty. Their kind words lose meaning. People begin to notice inconsistencies. And just like that, the truth they worked so hard to bury rises to the surface. Their mask will not protect them forever. What was built on pretense will fall in public view. And when it does, the world will see what you saw all along, not a kind heart, but a performer who mistook admiration for love. There comes a time in every toxic relationship when clarity begins to fade. You start losing your sense of direction. Simple decisions feel impossible. You second-guess your every word, your every thought. That is not by accident. It is the work of the spirit of confusion. It does not shout. It whispers. It creeps in slowly, taking peace from your mind and leaving behind endless doubt. The narcissist is an expert at summoning this chaos. They twist facts, deny things they said, and blame you for reactions they caused. When you cry, they say you are too emotional. When you speak truth, they call you bitter. When you try to leave, they play the victim. The goal is not to understand you, it is to make you question yourself. In their world, if you are confused, they remain in control. The Bible in 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 33 says, "For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace." That means wherever confusion reigns, God's presence has been pushed aside. The narcissist's environment becomes a battlefield for your mind. You start walking on eggshells, replaying conversations, wondering if you imagined the hurt. They make you feel guilty for wanting peace and ashamed for needing truth. This spirit of confusion does more than cloud your thinking. It separates you from your own identity. You begin to forget who you were before the chaos. You once laughed freely, dreamed boldly, prayed with confidence. But now, everything feels heavy. You start surviving instead of living. You become a shadow of yourself, waiting for their next reaction, their next criticism, their next storm. That is why the Lord allows discomfort to rise, so that you recognize this is not love. God does not dwell where confusion dominates. In James chapter 3, verse 16, it says, "For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there." Narcissists thrive on envy and self-seeking. Their confusion is spiritual smoke meant to hide truth. But when the Spirit of the Lord enters, light cuts through the fog. At first, that light may hurt your eyes. It feels like waking up after a long sleep. Memories return. Truths you once buried begin to rise. You see patterns you ignored. The same words that used to flatter you now sound hollow. The same kindness that once impressed you now feels false. This awakening can be painful because it reveals how deep the deception went. Yet, it is also holy because confusion cannot stand in the presence of divine truth. The Lord begins to restore your mind piece by piece. You start remembering your worth. You begin to hear His voice again, gentle and clear. He reminds you that love should not make you small, that peace should not require silence, that forgiveness does not mean returning to bondage. Slowly, your thoughts start aligning with truth again, and the fog begins to lift. The narcissist senses this change. They notice the strength returning to your voice, the peace in your silence, the confidence in your eyes, and it unsettles them. Their control weakens when you stop explaining yourself. Their confusion fails when you stop arguing. That is when their downfall begins, because when confusion leaves, truth enters. And once truth takes its place, the narcissist's world, built on lies, guilt, and control, starts to crumble from within. When confusion begins to fade, something powerful starts to rise within the soul: discernment. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not appear with thunder or lightning. It comes softly, like a whisper from heaven that says, "Now you see." Discernment is a sacred gift. It allows you to see not just what people show, but what they hide. It is the moment the heart begins to recognize spiritual truth beneath human behavior. You begin to understand that what looked like love was really control. What seemed like care was manipulation. What felt like apology was only a strategy to pull you back into pain. In Hebrews chapter 5 verse 14, it says, "But strong meat belongs to those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil." This means discernment grows stronger with experience. Every wound you endured, every tear you cried, every prayer whispered in secret, they were all training your spirit to recognize what is real and what is false. At first, this awakening can feel lonely. You begin to see people differently. You notice words that used to charm you now sound empty. You sense energy that feels heavy instead of peaceful. You realize not everyone who prays with you walks in truth. Some wear masks of righteousness while carrying hearts of deception. That realization hurts, but it also sets you free, because once discernment awakens, the narcissist loses their power. Their illusions cannot survive in the light of truth. You start to recognize patterns, how they twist words, shift blame, use emotions as weapons. You notice that every "I love you" was followed by a demand. Every gift came with an expectation. Every apology hid another lie. It is like finally seeing the strings of a puppet show that once felt real. The Lord's Spirit begins to whisper, "This is not love. This is bondage." You start remembering what real peace feels like: quiet, gentle, and without fear. The same spirit that once comforted you in your pain now begins to lead you out of it. The fog clears, and you begin to hear truth louder than deception. In John chapter 8, verse 32, Jesus said, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." That freedom is not only physical, it is spiritual. It is the ability to walk away without guilt, to set boundaries without shame, and to love yourself as God intended. Discernment also teaches mercy, not the kind that allows abuse to continue, but the kind that sees the brokenness in others while refusing to join them in their destruction. You begin to pray not from bitterness, but from understanding. You stop wishing harm and start seeking healing, even if that healing happens far away from you. When discernment grows, peace follows. You begin to protect your spirit the way a shepherd guards his flock. You stop explaining your worth to those who cannot see it. You stop fighting for a seat at a table where God never wanted you to eat. The need for validation fades, replaced by quiet confidence in who you are and who you belong to. The narcissist feels this shift. They sense your distance, your calm, your silence. They try to provoke you, but it no longer works. Their tricks fall flat. Their charm feels old. Their control weakens. The same eyes that once looked at them with confusion now look with clarity, and that is what terrifies them most, because discernment cannot be unlearned. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you know, you cannot unknow. Once the truth is revealed, deception dies. And when the narcissist realizes that their spell no longer binds you, they begin to feel the first tremors of the collapse that is yet to come. Every story of deliverance reaches a moment when the weight becomes too heavy to carry. That moment is the breaking point. It is the place where exhaustion meets awakening, where your spirit says, "No more." It often happens quietly, in a moment no one else sees. Maybe it's late at night after another argument, or early in the morning when the house feels cold and empty. You realize something inside you has finally snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. The narcissist never expects this moment. They believe you will stay forever, no matter how deep they wound you. They mistake your patience for weakness, your forgiveness for blindness, your love for surrender. But love does not mean endless suffering. Love that costs your peace is not love. It is bondage. In Psalm chapter 34, verse 18, it says, "The Lord is near to those who have a broken heart, and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That verse becomes real in this moment. The breaking point is not the end. It is the beginning of rescue. It is when heaven leans closer. The same pain that once made you question your worth now becomes the signal for divine intervention. The narcissist's control begins to crumble when you no longer respond. Silence becomes your greatest strength. You stop arguing, stop explaining, stop justifying your truth. The arguments that once lasted hours now end with a quiet walk away. The tears that once fell freely dry up because your soul has no more to give. This silence terrifies the narcissist. They sense something shifting. The energy that once fed them is gone. Breaking points often come with guilt. You might ask, is walking away unkind? Am I giving up on them? But remember, you are not abandoning a person. You are escaping a prison. You are not rejecting love. You are rejecting abuse disguised as affection. God does not call his children to suffer endlessly to prove loyalty. Even Christ walked away from those whose hearts were hardened to truth. Sometimes the Lord allows things to fall apart so you can finally see what was holding you back. The pain that once felt unbearable becomes a door to freedom. Every broken piece of your heart becomes a testimony that you survived what was meant to destroy you. You begin to notice small signs of strength returning, your laughter, your appetite, your desire to pray again. And when you finally leave, whether physically, emotionally, or spiritually, you step into the unknown with trembling faith. But the moment your foot crosses that invisible line of separation, heaven moves. The angels who watched you endure begin to rejoice. What was stolen from you, your peace, your confidence, your joy, will now begin to return. The narcissist, meanwhile, does not understand what just happened. They will reach out, pretending to repent. They will promise change, tears streaming down their face. But the spirit inside you will whisper, "This time, do not go back. You have seen behind the mask. You have heard enough empty apologies. You have felt enough false hope. Now you know better." The breaking point is sacred because it marks the shift from surviving to healing. It is the place where you trade tears for strength, pain for purpose, confusion for peace. It is not the end of your story. It is the start of your deliverance. But deliverance does not come overnight. The next season is quiet, lonely, strange. It will test your faith and patience in ways you never imagined. Because before peace returns, there must come a season of stillness, a time when God rebuilds you from the inside out. After the breaking point, silence becomes your closest companion. The phone stops ringing, the familiar voices disappear, and the world that once felt loud suddenly becomes still. It is in this season of isolation that the Lord begins his deepest work. This is not punishment. It is preparation. When God removes the noise, it is so you can finally hear his whisper. At first, the quiet can feel unbearable. You might look around and realize how much of your identity was built around keeping someone else happy. You wake up and no longer have to explain, defend, or apologize. Yet somehow you miss the chaos. That is what spiritual detox feels like. The mind longs for what it was addicted to, the drama, the highs and lows, the constant cycle of confusion and relief. But God allows this silence so your soul can relearn peace. In Isaiah chapter 30 verse 15, it says, "In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength." This verse becomes a guiding light in isolation. You begin to see how stillness strengthens you. You discover parts of yourself that had been buried beneath survival. You start to enjoy small moments. The sound of birds in the morning, the warmth of sunlight on your face, the peace of a prayer whispered without fear. During this season, many begin to question their purpose. You might ask, why am I alone? Why does it feel like God has hidden me? But what feels like hiding is actually protection. God separates you not to shame you, but to shield you. You were surrounded by manipulation for so long that your spirit needs space to heal. The Lord brings you into isolation so that no voice but his can influence your next step. Sometimes, the narcissist will try to break into this season. They will test your silence with messages, with gifts, or sudden remorse. They cannot stand being ignored. But this isolation is sacred ground. The Spirit of God stands guard around your peace. Every time you resist the pull to go back, your spiritual muscles grow stronger. Every time you choose peace over chaos, heaven takes notice. It is during isolation that you also face the echoes of the past. Old memories resurface, the words that wounded you, the moments that broke your confidence. Do not run from them. Let them rise and let them pass. Healing happens when you face truth without fear. As the psalmist wrote in Psalm chapter 46 verse 10, "Be still, and know that I am God." Stillness is not emptiness, it is the classroom of the Spirit. You begin to realize that what once felt like abandonment is actually renewal. Your mind clears. Your heart softens. You start forgiving, not to excuse what was done, but to release what no longer serves your spirit. You understand that closure is not always a conversation with the one who hurt you. Sometimes it is a prayer whispered through tears that says, "I release them, Lord, and I trust you with justice." The longer you stay in this season, the stronger your discernment becomes. You start recognizing peace as your new normal. The loneliness that once felt heavy now feels holy. You begin to enjoy your own company because you finally meet yourself again, not the version shaped by control, but the one God originally designed. This is the divine pause before restoration. And though the world cannot see it, something powerful is forming in the silence, a new strength, a quiet authority, a peace that no storm can shake, because after isolation comes fire, not to destroy, but to purify. When the season of isolation has done its quiet work, something powerful begins to move, a cleansing fire. It does not burn to destroy, but to purify. This is not the fire of anger or revenge. It is the fire of transformation, sent by the Lord to remove every trace of pain that the narcissist left behind. At first, this fire feels uncomfortable. It stirs emotions you thought you had already released. Memories rise like smoke, the harsh words, the betrayals, the moments when you begged for honesty and received silence instead. You may wonder, why am I feeling all of this again? But understand this truth, healing is not forgetting. Healing is facing the pain without letting it define you anymore. In Malachi chapter 3 verse 3, it says, "He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver." The refiner's fire is never meant to destroy the silver. It removes the impurities that dull its shine. That is what God is doing in this stage of your life. He is sitting close, carefully watching the process. The heat you feel is His love transforming you from the inside out. The narcissist tried to convince you that you were weak, that you were unworthy, that you needed them to have value. But as this cleansing fire moves through your soul, every lie begins to melt away. You begin to see the truth, that your strength was never gone, only hidden. Your peace was never lost, only buried. Your light was never extinguished, only dimmed by darkness that did not belong to you. The fire also reveals hidden wounds, the parts of you that learned to stay silent to keep peace, that accepted disrespect to avoid loneliness, that mistook manipulation for love. These are the places where the Holy Spirit now works gently, not to shame you, but to restore you. He teaches you to forgive yourself for what you tolerated while you were still learning your worth. You may feel the urge to fight the process, to run from the pain, to distract yourself. But if you stay, the fire will complete its work. Every tear you shed in this stage becomes a drop of healing. Each prayer becomes a spark that burns away shame. Every sleepless night becomes a conversation with heaven that reshapes your heart. The narcissist, meanwhile, begins to feel a different kind of fire, one of consequence. The same energy they use to destroy others begins to return to them. Doors that once opened easily now close. Their charm loses power. Their schemes turn against them. The same manipulation they used becomes the trap they cannot escape. While you are being refined, they are being exposed. While you are growing stronger, they are losing control. The spiritual balance is being restored, and as this fire continues, you start noticing something miraculous, peace returning in small ways. You smile without forcing it. You breathe deeper. You start enjoying quiet moments without anxiety. The Holy Spirit whispers, "See, you are becoming new." In Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2, God promises, "When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you." The fire does not come to harm you. It comes to reveal the strength that was already inside you. When this cleansing is complete, you will look at yourself and no longer see the same person who was once broken by the narcissist. You will see someone reborn, wiser, purer, and stronger in spirit. And soon, the world will see it too, because after the fire comes the moment when everything hidden in darkness must finally come to light. There comes a time when everything hidden must be revealed. It may not happen when you expect, but it always happens when heaven decides. This is the exposure of darkness, when every lie begins to collapse under the weight of truth. What the narcissist thought would remain hidden forever starts to surface in ways they cannot control. At first, it may seem quiet, but beneath the surface, spiritual justice is already in motion. The narcissist begins to stumble in the same traps they once set for others. Their words begin to contradict themselves. Their charm loses its effect. The same people they deceived start to see through them. What was once covered in illusion now stands naked before truth. In Luke chapter 8, verse 17, Jesus said, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hidden that shall not be known and come to light." That promise does not fail. It may take time, but divine exposure never misses its mark. The same spirit that once revealed the truth to you now begins to uncover it publicly. The narcissist begins to panic. They sense that something spiritual is shifting against them. The same lies they use to destroy others start turning back upon their own life. Their reputation, which they valued above everything, starts to crumble. Their connections weaken, their influence fades, and the false image they built begins to break apart piece by piece. This exposure does not come from human revenge. It comes from divine justice. God allows truth to rise in His own timing so that pride is humbled and deception is silenced. The narcissist who once laughed at your pain now faces the reflection of their own cruelty. Their games no longer work because the light has entered the room. Meanwhile, the one who suffered quietly begins to walk in peace. You no longer need to prove what happened. You do not have to defend your story or fight to be believed. God Himself becomes your defender. As written in Psalm chapter 37, verse 6, He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, your justice like the noonday sun. The truth will speak for you in ways words never could. During this time, you may feel tempted to look back, to watch the collapse unfold. But the Spirit will whisper, "Keep walking." Exposure is not your responsibility. It is God's. You have been through the fire. You have been refined. Now your task is to stay in peace while heaven finishes the work. The narcissist will try to regain control, using pity or fear. They will say, "You misunderstood me," or "Everyone makes mistakes." But the same charm that once blinded you now sounds empty. You see through their words because discernment has become your armor. You recognize that every attempt to return is only another form of manipulation. And you stand firm. What makes exposure powerful is that it does not just reveal the narcissist, it reveals you. It shows how much you have grown. The strength, the patience, the quiet dignity that now surrounds you is the clearest evidence of transformation. You no longer chase truth. You embody it. The exposure of darkness is not about revenge. It is about restoration. It is about light reclaiming the ground that darkness once occupied. It is about the universe under God's law, bringing every hidden act into perfect balance. And when this process is complete, the narcissist will face the one force they cannot manipulate, divine justice itself. Because after exposure comes the law that governs it all. What you sow, you shall surely reap. There is a law written not by man, but by the hand of heaven itself, the law of divine justice. It cannot be bribed, delayed, or deceived. It moves in silence and strikes with precision. Every action, every word, every secret motive returns to its sender in due time. The narcissist may escape human judgment for a while, but no one escapes divine balance. In Galatians chapter 6 verse 7, it says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap." This is not only a moral warning, it is a spiritual law. When someone sows love, they receive peace. When they sow cruelty, they receive turmoil. When they sow manipulation, they harvest confusion. And when they sow pain, pain finds its way back to them, multiplied. The narcissist lived by deception, believing their charm could rewrite reality. But spiritual law is not fooled by appearances. The same deceit they used to rise now becomes the rope that pulls them down. The same lies they told return as isolation. The same control they exercised turns into chaos within their own life. The very world they built begins to collapse upon itself. At first, it may seem as if nothing is happening. But divine justice is patient. It unfolds slowly so that the lesson is complete. The narcissist begins to lose what they once valued most: admiration, attention, and power. Their relationships fracture because trust no longer follows them. Their schemes backfire because truth has taken root. Every seed they planted in darkness now grows in full daylight for all to see. But divine justice is not about revenge. It is about restoration. It restores the balance that was once broken. It returns to you what was taken: peace, clarity, and confidence. You begin to walk freely again, no longer weighed down by fear or shame. The same God who allowed the storm now gives you the calm after it. There is a peace that comes when you stop waiting for apology and start trusting divine timing. The narcissist may never admit their wrongs. They may even continue pretending they have moved on successfully. But deep within, they cannot escape the emptiness that follows them. Their own mind becomes their punishment, restless, suspicious, and without peace. In Proverbs chapter 11 verse 21, it says, "Though hand join in hand, the wicked shall not go unpunished. but the seed of the righteous shall be delivered. This means no alliance, no manipulation, no charm can protect the narcissist from what they have sown. The Lord sees every hidden act, every whispered lie, every false tear. Justice does not forget, and while they face the consequences of their choices, you walk in new freedom. You no longer crave revenge because you understand what belongs to divine law will be handled by divine hands. You are free to focus on healing, on purpose, on building the life that was paused during your pain. The most powerful moment of justice is not when the narcissist falls. It is when you rise, when your joy returns, when you laugh again without fear, when peace becomes your daily companion. That is when heaven declares the case closed. And yet, this story is not finished. Because after justice comes something even greater, the gentle return of peace that no storm can disturb. After the storm of exposure and justice, the air begins to feel lighter. The nights that were once filled with tears now pass quietly. The mornings that used to feel heavy begin to carry a new calm. This is the return of peace, not the temporary kind that depends on people or circumstances, but the peace that comes from God alone. Peace is not just the absence of conflict. It is the presence of divine order. It is what happens when your heart and heaven begin to move in harmony again. For so long, your emotions were tied to the chaos of the narcissist. Their moods shaped your days. Their anger dictated your peace. But now, those ties are broken. Their voice no longer echoes in your spirit. You have been set free. In John chapter 14, verse 27, Jesus said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." These words remind us that true peace is not earned, it is given. It flows like living water into hearts that have endured the fire. At first, this peace may feel strange. You might not know what to do with it. After years of walking on eggshells, silence feels suspicious. Calm feels unfamiliar. You may even find yourself waiting for the next storm. But slowly, you realize the storm is gone. The lightning has passed. What you are hearing is not the silence of danger, it is the quiet of healing. You start to sleep through the night again. You start smiling for no reason. You begin to feel joy in the smallest things, the smell of morning coffee, the sound of birds, the warmth of sunlight. These are not small miracles. They are the proof that your soul is recovering. The same world that once felt gray now begins to glow with color again. The narcissist, however, cannot find this peace. They may appear calm on the outside, but inside they are restless. Their conscience haunts them, their relationships crumble, and their false confidence begins to shake. They may have money, friends, and attention, but peace, real peace, is something their heart will never hold. Because peace cannot exist where truth is absent. As peace returns to you, forgiveness begins to grow. Not because they deserve it, but because your heart deserves rest. Forgiveness does not mean reunion. It means release. You stop carrying their sins as your burden. You stop replaying what they did in your mind. You allow God to handle the outcome. You step away from bitterness and into freedom. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 7, the word says, "And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." That is exactly what begins to happen. Peace becomes your guard. It stands at the door of your heart, refusing entry to fear, anger, and anxiety. It keeps your thoughts clear and your emotions steady. This peace also brings clarity about your future. You start dreaming again. You begin to rebuild your life, not in haste, but with wisdom. You choose friends carefully, love slowly, and live intentionally. You no longer seek approval from others because you know who you are in God's eyes. Peace changes your posture. You walk taller, speak calmer, and smile with confidence. The people around you notice the glow, the quiet strength that cannot be faked. That is what divine peace looks like, the reflection of a soul that has been through fire and came out gold. But this peace is not the final step. Because after peace returns, something even more powerful begins to unfold, the blessing that follows betrayal. When peace has settled into your spirit, the Lord begins to reveal something even deeper, the blessing hidden behind the betrayal. For a long time, you may have wondered why you had to suffer so much, why someone's lies and cruelty were allowed to wound your heart so deeply. But in this sacred season, the answers begin to appear, not through explanations, but through transformation. In Romans chapter 8 verse 28, it says, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose." The betrayal you endured did not destroy you, it redirected you. It stripped away what could not go with you into your next chapter. It humbled you, refined you, and prepared you for blessings that could only be carried by a healed heart. At first, it might be hard to call what happened a blessing. Betrayal breaks something inside of you. It makes you cautious, guarded, even afraid to love again. But slowly, as the Lord restores your confidence, you begin to see that what was meant for evil has been turned for good. The narcissist thought they were ending you, but instead, they activated your awakening. Because of that pain, you now know your worth. Because of that deception, you now know truth. Because of that loss, you now value peace more than approval. You learned how to pray in pain, how to trust in darkness, and how to love yourself the way God always intended. That is not weakness, that is wisdom bought through suffering. The blessing after betrayal is not always material. It is spiritual strength. It is emotional freedom. It is the ability to look back at what once destroyed you and say, "Thank you, Lord, for not letting me stay there." You start noticing that your mind is sharper, your heart softer, and your discernment stronger. The things that once broke you now build you, and while you rise, the narcissist begins to decline. Their energy fades. Their relationships fall apart. They search for the same admiration they once had but cannot find it, because the favor that once covered them is gone. Divine justice has completed its work, and now the blessings that were once delayed begin to flow into your life. You begin to attract peace where there was once chaos. Genuine people enter your path. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. You may even notice that your face looks lighter, your laughter sounds deeper, and your presence carries calmness. That is the evidence of divine restoration. In Joel chapter 2 verse 25, God promises, "I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten." That means everything you lost, time, confidence, joy, and even love, will be returned in a greater measure. The enemy tried to steal your light, but God uses even the betrayal to amplify it. You start understanding that forgiveness was never about them. It was about clearing space for your blessings. You realize you cannot carry resentment into the next level of your life. You begin to love without fear again, not because you trust easily, but because you now trust wisely, and this is where the real beauty of divine recovery shines. What once made you cry now makes you grateful. What once broke your heart now builds your testimony. You are no longer the same person who walked into that storm. You have become stronger, wiser, and filled with faith that cannot be shaken. The narcissist thought they ended your story, but they were only a chapter. God was always the author, and this part of the book is where redemption begins, because the greatest blessing after betrayal is not what you receive, but who you become. And as this transformation completes, something even more powerful emerges, a new identity shaped not by pain, but by purpose. When the storm has passed and the wounds have turned into wisdom, a new identity begins to form within you. It is not built on pain, but on peace. It is not shaped by fear, but by faith. This identity is what God had planned for you all along. A version of yourself that could only be born through fire and purified by trials. In Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19, it says, "Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall the not know it?" That verse describes exactly what happens after the destruction caused by the narcissist's actions. The old version of you, the one who tolerated disrespect, ignored red flags, and stayed silent to keep peace, has been laid to rest. In its place rises a new spirit, one that refuses to live in fear or shame. This is not arrogance. This is awareness. You no longer see yourself as broken or weak. You now understand your strength came from surviving what was meant to destroy you. You realize that the love you gave was not wasted. It was simply misplaced. And the forgiveness you now carry is not for their sake, but for your freedom. You start to see your reflection differently. Where you once saw sadness, you now see resilience. Where there was confusion, there is now clarity. You recognize that the same heart that was once deceived is now discerning. You are no longer chasing validation. You are walking in purpose. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17, the Bible says, "Therefore if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new." This means your identity is no longer tied to what the narcissist did to you. You are not defined by the betrayal, the rejection, or the manipulation. You are defined by how God restored you after it. Your voice becomes stronger. Your boundaries become sacred. You no longer explain your worth to those who cannot see it. You no longer try to convince someone to love you right. Instead, you rest in the assurance that the Lord Himself calls you worthy. That truth becomes your foundation. And while the narcissist tries to cling to their false image, your authenticity shines brighter than ever. You don't need to prove anything. Your peace speaks louder than their performance. You have become the living testimony that no darkness can destroy a soul protected by divine light. Each day, you notice the shift. The things that once triggered you no longer hold power. The names that once brought pain now hold no weight. You find joy in small things again, sunlight through the window, laughter in quiet rooms, songs that once made you cry now make you smile. This is what healing looks like. The narcissist's downfall continues quietly in the background, but you are too focused on your growth to even notice. Their chaos no longer concerns you. Their karma is not your responsibility. Your only focus now is becoming who God called you to be. And so, this new identity stands firm, gentle but unbreakable, humble but powerful. You have been refined by the fire and made whole by grace. You have walked through the valley of heartbreak and come out crowned with peace. In this season, your story no longer carries pain, it carries power. You are living proof that no betrayal can cancel God's plan. The past no longer defines you. It refines you. And now, as this new identity fully emerges, one final truth begins to unfold. That every dark act, every hidden sin, every cruel intention the narcissist once committed is now collapsing under divine judgment. Their destruction is near, and your restoration is complete. There comes a day when the storm is finally quiet. The memories that once pierced your heart begin to fade into distant echoes. The pain that once shaped your nights turns into peace that cannot be shaken. This is the day when divine justice has finished its work and the light of restoration shines brighter than ever before. For a long time, you may have asked, will they ever face the consequences of what they did? The lies, the manipulation, the cruelty, all of it seemed to go unnoticed. But divine justice is never late. It moves in silence, in timing so perfect that no one can interfere. In Galatians chapter 6 verse 7, it says, "Be not deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Every seed the narcissist planted in deceit has now grown into thorns that pierce their own life. Every lie they told now surrounds them in confusion. Every heart they broke has become the mirror through which they now see their own emptiness. They may still pretend, still wear the mask of strength, but behind it, there is no rest. Their peace is gone. Their joy is gone. Their spirit is tormented by the same darkness they once used against others. This is not your revenge. This is divine correction. The hand of heaven balances every scale, and while their world crumbles, yours begins to flourish. You no longer look back with anger. You look back with understanding. You see that what once seemed unfair was actually God's preparation. You were never being punished. You were being positioned. In Psalm chapter 30 verse 5, it says, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning." And now that morning has arrived for you. The light you feel is not just emotional relief, it is spiritual rebirth. You are walking in the peace that only comes after surviving the valley. You start noticing divine favor flowing around you. Doors that were closed begin to open. People who truly care for you begin to appear. Every broken area of your life starts to align again, not through effort, but through grace. The Lord is not only restoring what was lost, He is giving you better. The narcissist once believed they were untouchable. They thought their charm could protect them from truth. But now, truth is all they can see, and it burns. Their connections fade, their reputation weakens, and every lie they told begins to expose itself. That is the justice of heaven at work, not cruel, but complete. Meanwhile, your heart is light again. You no longer feel the urge to prove, to chase, or to explain. You simply walk forward, guided by peace. You are not the same soul who once begged to be understood. You are now the soul who understands. The Lord has rewritten your story. The ending is not tragedy, but triumph. You have walked through the fire, and now you shine brighter because of it. What they meant for evil has become your elevation. So tonight, as your heart rests, remember this truth. Every dark act that was used against you has been turned into your breakthrough. Every cruel word that was meant to break you has now strengthened your faith. And every tear that once fell in pain has watered the ground where new blessings now grow. The narcissist's destruction is the echo of their own actions, but your peace is the proof of divine mercy. You have been set free, healed, and restored. The battle is over, and the light beyond it is yours forever. Rest in that peace. Rest in that victory. Rest in the quiet, knowing that you survived what was meant to end you, and because of that, you now walk in unshakable grace.